there are accusations coming from both of your countries against one another. From the Russian side, you are saying accusation from the Turkish side about the Russia's violation of Turkey's airspace is a provocation, while Turkey's side is saying that Russia is trying to escalate the crisis by sending its plane to the Turkish airspace. What exactly is going on over there, Ms. Ozdal? Shall we go from you first?
Well, okay, thank you. This is the second claim of Turkey about the violations. This is a very technical issue, and of course, Turkey and Russia obviously has very different approaches. It was the same in the incident of 21st of November as well. Since then, actually, we haven't found any common ground about what is going on exactly in terms of technical military situation. But what is for sure is that we are in a new period of Turkey-Russia relations, and it has implications not only in terms of bilateral relations, but also for the regional and even global issues, I suppose. We are going to face far more challenges, I believe. We may have Turkey-Russia crisis, future crisis, not only in terms of airspace violations, but also in terms of political disagreements and claims, accusation towards each other. And this is not only as a result of one incident, but the incident of the 21st of November is actually kind of an accumulation of many disagreements areas. So this is the latest crisis, and unfortunately the crisis management that time didn't work.
Mr. Babich, from the Russian side, of course, we are watching earlier some background footages coming from November incident. Yes, indeed, that crisis was not resolved, and now a new accusation came up again. What about from the Russian side? What are you seeking from the Turkish-Russia relations now?
Well, I agree with our Turkish participant that this is a technical issue. I don't think that the Russian command, the Russian military command, deliberately sent planes so that they would violate the Turkish airspace. I don't believe that it happened in November, that this was premeditated on the Russian side. And I don't think that this time it was a premeditated move. The problem is that basically in Syria, I don't believe that the clash of the Russian and Turkish interest is fatal. I think that in the end, both Turkey and Russia are interested in the cessation of violence in Syria and in a stable Syria. The problem is that for some reason, the Turkish leader, Mr. Erdogan, back at the time when he was the prime minister, decided to support the insurgency in Syria since its beginning in the year 2011. A lot of people in Russia were surprised by that, because prior to that, Mr. Erdogan had been a friend of the Syrian president Bashar al-Assad. They even spent vacations together, yachting. So I think, I don't know what Mr. Erdogan's calculations were, but these calculations proved to be wrong, because Mr. Assad turned out to be much stronger than the West and Mr. Erdogan expected.
Right.
He has been able to resist the insurgency for 4 years now, and Turkey has got a lot of problems because there are refugees coming to Turkey. The Kurdish minority near Turkish border is getting more and more well armed and well supplied, including by Turkey's NATO allies, by the United States. So little by little it becomes more and more problematic, not only for Syria but also for Turkey. I think that at the Geneva talks which are studying right now, one of the main problems is the absence of the representatives of the Kurdish minority
Mr. Babich,
in Syria.
You might want to save some of your points for a little bit later.
Insisted that they should not be there.
You might want to save some of your points for later discussion. Let me go through some of the points both of you have already mentioned. Ms. Ozdal, what about the change of strategy and the change of position, which Mr. Babich termed from the Russian side was quite a surprise by the Turkish side in terms of supporting the opposition of the Turkish, the Syrian government. And why was that turn of political support? What was and what could be, in your understanding, Mr. Ozdal, is the national interest of Turkey in this regard?
Well, first of all, let me start by saying that the uprisings in the Middle East, actually in Syria, was a part of the Arab Spring. So how it was evaluated from Turkey by the Turkish government is the uprising of people who were asking for democracy and democratic regimes there. So Syria was part of that. And actually, in all the Arab countries who faced with the kind of an Arab Spring, we saw different resolutions, different results from every particular country. So in case of Syria, actually, the process, first of all, is in its 4th year. And probably not only Turkey, but all international actors failed so much in continuing a very comprehensive and very clear-cut foreign policy towards Syria. So today, we are in a very different picture than 4 years ago, even 2 years ago. It was last summer, actually, when Assad regime was almost so close to lose the control. But with the Russian intensive operation in Syria, actually the future of Syria also has changed. During that time, the allies of Turkey also reconsidered their foreign policy, because we have witnessed United States who actually draw red lines and red lines again and again. So while every country actually were redefining its foreign policy, Turkey couldn't that much redefine. And Turkey's policy now clearly needs reconsiderations about current attitudes towards Syrian regime, current attitude towards evaluating its foreign policy towards Middle East, and of course, we need to readdress our roadmap regarding to the new situation in the Middle East. But this is not only limited with the Turkish foreign policy. What I mean here is almost all the actors, in line with their national interest and in line with their priorities, and of course in line with their threat perceptions, their policy has changed. What I mean here is we now face with the European Union countries who actually do prioritize the migration issue. So for them, regimes start to be a bit more legitimate actor to sit on the table and to reconsider the situation. While 4 years ago, 3 years ago, even 2 years ago, that was not a clear message.
It is.
So therefore, actually, Turkey's...
It is about a priority, isn't it? Mr. Babich, before I go to the Chinese guest, let me ask back to you again. Well, the Ankara think tanks, including Ms. Ozdal, are talking about prioritize, once again, the most important advantages for Turkey in terms of its foreign policy and the regional policies. What about Russia? Is Russia going to continue to pick points and pick fights with Turkey? Is that going to be your national interest, even though Turkey at this point still is very much opposed to the Assad regime?
Well, I don't think that Russia picked a fight with Turkey. Certainly, Russia didn't want. Can I just explain
Go ahead, Mr.
myself? I think it was not Russia's intention to have a conflict with Turkey, because if our conflict with the EU, with the European Union, and with the United States is quite logical, because these two entities want to dominate the world with their vision of the so-called democracy, Russian-Turkish relations have been very good. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, we had excellent relationship. The only point where we indeed disagreed was the moment when Mr. Erdogan supported the so-called Arab Spring on the Syrian territory. I agree with our Turkish counterpart. I like her, I would say, respectful tone. Maybe the motives of Mr. Erdogan initially were to support democracy in Syria. But in a situation where you have 100,000 people dead, when you have such animosity, I think it's just indecent, it's preposterous to talk about democracy. And I think it's understandable why Mr. Assad and his community the Christians, the Alawites, why they managed to resist for so long. The problem is that if they lose, they will be simply destroyed, or they will have to emigrate to other countries. So that's why they keep resisting, even despite having so many countries against them. Well, I think that right now the world should indeed view the Syrian situation differently, because out of a relatively small problem, democracy in Syria, we have huge problems now. We have 1 million refugees coming to Germany. We have Turkey destabilized with several terrible terrorist acts happening there. And when people say in the West and in Turkey that if Mr. Assad had been toppled 2 years ago, 3 years ago, everything would be nice, I'm sorry, I can't agree with that.
I see.
The United States was going to bomb Syria in 2013, 2 months before the so-called Islamic State was founded. The people who founded the Islamic State, they were already there in Syria at the moment. So if the United States had crushed the Syrian government army's defenses,
All right.
the Islamic State would be now in Damascus with chemical weapons and with other dreadful weapons
Mr.
that
Cui.
would be very
Yes.
dangerous for the whole world and primarily for Turkey.
Well, we got rhetoric coming from both sides, but certainly both sides have been doing some soul searching at this moment about what should be the priorities and how others have changed. As a result, they should readjust as well. What about from the Chinese perspective? How do you see the role of Russia in the Syrian crisis? Seems to be evolving all the time. And now others' attitudes toward Russia also seems to have changed as a result of the biggest humanitarian crisis going on.
Yes, exactly. Firstly, as a Chinese observer, I feel happy to hear from both guests. They regarded this, accusation of place violation just as a technical issue. So I hope that this kind of points will still occupy the mindset of the leaders from both the countries. If so, we do have more chance to have a peaceful solution for any kind of confrontation between two countries. Yes, regarding to this situation now, especially between Russia and some other regional countries, including Turkey, we can find out, especially between Turkey and Russia. I agree with the Russian guest mentioned that in the past, these two countries has had a very good relations, and they want to have a more cooperation in many fields. But since Russia involved into this Syria crisis strongly, I think we can find a very, very big job of this bilateral relations between two countries. So certainly, I think this very, very strong invitation by Russia into towards the Syria crisis is out of the interest of Turkey. I think firstly because we can understand it.
But now you also heard
Yeah.
from our Turkish guests that Turkey is also doing this rethinking about its priorities now. Before it was more about how to get into the European Union
Yes.
and how to maintain better ties with the United States, how to maintain what they consider as democratic changes inside the Middle East and about there. But now there are some different thinking going on inside
Right.
Turkey. So what do you think might be the potential future?
Yeah, I think
Can both sides take one step back?
I think now the situation in that part of the region is so complicated. Indeed, on one hand, okay, everybody or every country, they do have, it looks like a common interests or common, target. For example, how about terrorism? How about Islamic State? But at the same time, on the other hand, the problem is they do have a different approach.